Hello everyone. In this video, we will be talking about OAuth 2.0 and we will try to understand it in very simplified terms. Before directly diverging into OAuth 2.0, let's first understand the difference between authentication and authorization. So authentication this is simply a process to verify if a certain user exists within a system. For example, you can see in the example, which is a very pretty simple example. You are working in a company and there is a guard outside, right? So the guard would only allow the people that the guard verifies or authenticates that these people work in a company, and the guard would deny access to all of the people who do not work in a particular company. So that is a very simple example of authentication. So the second terminology is about authorization. So it is a process to verify permissions of a user in a system. For example, you're working in a company, right? There are multiple designations of multiple people. So let's say there's a CEO working in a company. The CEO has access. CEO has the rights or permission to access anything within the company. However, if there's an intern working, he does not have access or rights to access each and everything within the company. So the process to verify permission and to give access is the terminology which comes under the topic of authorization. So I hope authentication and authorization is clear to you. So the topic of OAuth 2.0 does not have anything to do with authentication, but it has everything to do with authorization. So what OAuth 2.0 does is it solves access delegation problem. So let's first discuss about what is access delegation problem. So access delegation means that you are working on the application and you want an access to some third party application. So that is the problem that it helps solves. So one way to delegate access to a third-party app would be, you would give your username and password or email and password to the third-party app. So for example, you are working on some sort of, application which requires access to the photos in Google Photos, right? So one way would be, you would give your username and password to the application, which tends to access Google Photos. But if you give your username and password, they not only can access photos, but they can access each and everything which is associated with your Google account. So that is not, a very appropriate or very secure approach to this particular problem. So the second approach would be to help use of OAuth 2.0. So what would this protocol do? It would give you a time bound token. Time bound token means that it would expire after a certain duration of time. So that particular token can be used for a well defined purpose. So what it does is it gives you a token with expiry date and a defined purpose. The defined purpose could be to access just and just Google Photos or just and just Google Calendar. So that is a particularly well defined purpose. So this is a much more appropriate and proper solution to the delegating access problem. So there is an application called Calendly. It helps others set meeting with you. Okay. So if you go to the Calendly and you try to sign up and you try to use it, it would give you a certain pop-up like that, which I have shown here in this particular slide. It clearly asks Calendly wants to access your Google Calendar. See, edit, share, permanently delete all the calendars that you access using Google Calendar. So you read that and you give access to Calendly to perform these operations. So this is a practical application of how OAuth 2.0 is used in our industry. So what would be the purpose that we gathered from our previous slide? It would be, to allow Calendly to obtain a token from Google, the token for a well-defined purpose, which allows only to create, read, update, or delete only and only calendar related data. So we get a time bound token for a very well-defined purpose for this particular Calendly application. So let's discuss about the flow. So whenever you go to the Calendly application, Calendly would redirect the user or you to the Google's page. A separate window would pop up and it would require you to log in to Google with your own credentials. After the user has successfully logged into the Google would ask the user to give specific permissions. So, if you are into security stuff, I would advise you to read what kind of specific permissions you are allowing a third-party application. So here you can see that Calendly is only asking the permissions for reading, updating, or deleting the calendar specific data. So this is the second step. First step is you log in. Second step is you give permission to the Google. You allow Google to give permission to the Calendly for a specific service. So once you give permission, Google, for Calendly to work with calendar related data, Google would give auth code to the Calendly front end. Because you are obviously on a working on a browser, so Google would send auth code to the Calendly front end application. So once the front end has received auth code from the Google, what it would do is it would send the auth code to the backend side of the application. So backend would already have a client secret stored within it. Okay. So what it would do is it would combine auth code with client secret, and from the backend it would send the request to the Google server. Okay. And Google server would then send the access token to the backend application, and then backend application of the would send the access token to the front end application. So this channeling is done because we cannot store client secret to the front end for the security concerns, because front end is not as much secure as the security that is implemented on the backend side of the application. So we make sure that client secret is always secured, is always stored in a very very secure manner. And because the combination of auth code and client secret would help us to help us obtain access token, and then that access token would help Calendly or any third party application to access any service which was granted permission by the particular user. Once the backend has received the access token, the backend can uh, you know call uh, APIs from the Google Calendar service, but only the Google Calendar service. So if the Calendly backend or any third party application backend tends to use that access token to maybe access Google Contacts or Google Drive or any other third party, any other service of the Google, other than for what the access token is defined for, then that token would not work. And this is how OAuth 2.0 would accomplish its purpose for a well defined purpose.